Welcome everybody. My name is Jakob Sloth-Brodersen, and I'm going to talk about the art of asking questions. And everybody asks questions. We also ask a lot of questions in our day-to-day work. But testers, and I'm a tester, you will not be able to forget that, they tend to ask a lot of inconvenient questions at a lot of inconvenient times. So the testers need to be extra careful. Also, the tester needs to be able to have a good working relationship with people, even after coming with a lot of these nagging questions. Everybody can benefit from this talk. It's about general principles. And I might have called this talk the economics of asking questions, but I thought that was too boring, so I went with the art of asking questions instead. First, I'll sketch out my road to testing. Actually, I've been a software testing professional for more than 30 years, and I started way back in 1988 when I was 17 years old. Back then, I didn't see myself as a tester. I saw myself as a computer game reviewer. It was basically a teenager's dream. I got free games in the mail. I got an excuse to play the games. I got money for writing the reviews. And this was a very long time ago. This was print magazine. This was month-long deadlines. And there was no internet. And that meant that I actually had to play the games, understand the games. I was not able to copy some other review from some other place on the internet. It was all on me. But that was a fun challenge. You'll see I started, that was Commodore 64. You'll see up there, along with my very, very first review of the Great Giant Sisters. And the print quality was really awful right at the beginning. But Giant Sisters, that was actually quite a good sideways scroller, Mario inspired. Later on, I moved on to the Amiga and the PC, and I ended up being part of the Danish computer game reviewer scene for over a decade, I guess. And we were a number of reviewers who hopped from magazine to magazine and were social together, went on vacations, and all that kind of thing. It was a good time for me. And there are some very important differences between reviewers and testers. First of all, we were looking at finished software, and it's too late for bug fixes, none of that. Second, the priority, that is to entertain the audience, that is typically male, young gamers, and as a reviewer, you're not part of a development team, and you're free to make fun of the developers. You can say that as a reviewer, you are outside the tent pissing in. Yeah. We were entertainers, and we gave awards to some of the games. What you see here is the Gold Game award from a magazine called Games Preview. This was one of the most fun magazines we could work for. I worked for, and we had great freedom and a lot of fun. But when we had a bad game, we also had an award for that, only for the exceptionally bad games. But they got this one. And I'm not proud of it today with the broken glasses, the propeller cap, and the teeth and all. I don't think it would be kosher today, but in the early 90s, that's what we did. So basically, we threw the developers under the bus, and we didn't factor in things like optimistic deadlines, bad requirements, all of that things. We just buried the game and had fun doing so. But then I ended up switching sides, and that was a bit random actually. At the university, I just have a water. At the university, I met a guy who went on to co-found an IT company. And after some time, he asked me if I wanted to help out with testing what they were doing. It was back then CD-ROM software, but it quickly became internet. And we started doing CMS software before it was even called CMS. So I started as a freelance tester. That was in 1998. And I had nobody to learn from. I had to figure it out myself. But I soon found out that I could easily reuse my experience in hitting a piece of software and explaining what was good and what was bad. I had to reuse that. But I also found out that I couldn't reuse the way I communicated to the devs. It had to be reinvented from bottom up, and I had to be nice. Another thing I learned was that I really like this position. Instead of just ranting, which can be fun, I was able to make software better. And I found out that that was really something that gave purpose to me. Also, the attack surface was much better than just hitting a game in the UI. I had access to the code, I had access to the database. I had a lot of fun things I could do to find bad stuff. And then being part of a dev team, that was cool too, working together with people, making stuff better together. There was a social element. Being a journalist, especially a computer journalist at that time, was a bit lonely. Of course, you had your other reviewer friends, but not day to day. Here we were sitting closely together. There was a foosball table, one of the good ones even, and free soft drinks, everything. So what was not to like? So I ended up going full-time there in 2000. And ever since that time, I have been testing. And sometimes I've been asked, why don't you want to be a developer? And I've been thinking that sometimes, why don't I want to be a developer? First of all, of course, I like to punish the software. But one other thing is that I don't really like doing code. These machine languages, I'm not that fond of them. I can write code, I can read it, etc. But I really prefer human languages like English, like Danish, and the nuance and subtlety you can get there, and the way you can break the rules and express yourself. And I also, in my spare time, do some poetry where I do just that. But to sum up, now I was inside the tent and I was pissing out. Much better. So now on to the questions. Everybody asks questions every day. But as I said in the beginning, testers, they typically ask more questions, or probably ask more questions than the average guy. And as I said, many of these questions may be hard and come at hard times. My primary advice about asking questions is that you should not be afraid to ask them, but you should make sure you do not end up like Spørgjørn here. This is a Danish children's book, which is very, very important, well known in Denmark, but which has for some reason never been translated into English. The English title would be something like Inquisitive Tom, and you can see the front page there. I have a newer edition on my table here, and it's illustrated by a very, very Danish artist and inventor in check marks called Storm P. And the main character in the book, Spørgjørn, Inquisitive Tom, he doesn't know how to limit his questioning, and you will see that later on. Yeah. First of all, the cost of asking questions. Every time you ask a question, it has a cost associated with it. People generally like to be asked because that confirms that they know something that they can give back. But if you ask too much and you ask unnecessary questions, they'll get tired of you. You use up your quota of questions. And that quota can be hard to replenish if you're going that way. So the first thing I do, and you too, is to try to see, can I find the answer to this question myself? I typically look at, of course, Google, Confluence. Probably there might be something in a Jira. There might be a Slack thread where you could get it. And this is not to say that you need to spend half a day to do this, but spending just a little bit of time and remembering to ask yourself that question, can I find this quite easily? That will save yourself from a number of questions. However, you also need to factor in, of course, the urgency of the question. If there is something, a likely release breaker, you will probably reach out to a developer faster than you would if it's just something that's not release critical. And also, try not to ask the same questions again. That's also a bummer. I do try to keep notes of some kind. I try to structure them, and that helps a lot. But sometimes even I forget stuff, and then I go back to the developer and ask, and then I suck it up. I just say, I know you told me this once, I forgot, will you tell me again? And then that's okay. Might as well get right to it. The first thing to consider with these questions, that's should I talk, should we do it orally, or should we type? And the answer to this question depends a lot on the physical setup of your team. During Corona, I was working in a team where, of course, we were all sitting at home, so we were doing a lot of Slack questions. I was doing a lot of Slack questioning. And right now, where I'm working now, we are sitting in the same office, only 2 or 3 meters away from my devs. So at that point, it doesn't make sense to make a long, detailed question if you can just go and pat him on the shoulder. But of course, you need to be to look. Is this guy deep in the zone coding? Then I probably shouldn't do this. Then maybe I should just do a Slack ping so he can pick it up whenever he has the time. Of course, you need to find something else to work on in the meantime, but that's actually better than having to be a disturbance where it's not needed. There is also a huge difference between oral and written questions. For the oral questions, you don't need to do much work up front. You start out and you can get some initial response from the person you're talking to, and you can do some freestyling, some ad hoc interaction, and that's fine. Written questions, that's much more complicated, because if you start writing a written question and the first answer you get back is, have you thought about A? And then the second question you get back is, have you thought about B? And then it's just very, very slowly, often a ping pong without getting to the point. So what I try to do there is to create proper self-contained questions that actually contains and anticipates all these obvious questions that might come. For example, the dev might say, which environment were you testing in? Or which URL, or blah, blah, blah. You just put an append that. That might make up for quite some text, but you can structure that, and it's very important to do so. I'll get back to this shortly. And as always, if you're able to record a video or make some screenshots, that's super good. It's faster, and sometimes it also includes information you weren't aware of and information that can be used. Then, who to ask? And then that's very much a question of experience, both your experience and the developers' experiences. So you need to figure out, to get to know your team, who knows what and who doesn't know what. Because asking the wrong person, that costs as a question, and it costs as a disturbance, but you don't get any answer out of it. Also, sometimes it actually makes sense to ask somebody who might not know the answer, and that's when you're asking a junior. But that's a good way to spread knowledge within the team. You ask a junior, he tries to answer your question, and the junior then in turn asks the dev with the experiences that might have it all. But then you trigger knowledge sharing within the team, and that's also super good. There's also to figure out who to ask the answering time, and if you're talking orally, then you got the person. But if you're doing questions on Slack, for example, in my experience, the answering time varies wildly. I've been working with developers who seem to have an eye on Slack all the time. They return my pings and my questions in 2 minutes, and then I've been working with developers who are good and do what they're doing, but they don't even seem to look at Slack on a daily basis. So I know that if I need to get them, I need to do something extra. Also, you get to know your developer, and you know how useful their answers typically are. Some developers, they are happy to provide detailed answers that you can work on. Other developers, they try to get off on it a little bit easier and might not think about it that much. You can also, of course, hear in the tone of the answer how much the developer likes to engage in this way. That's a very soft thing, but it also makes sense. But the very most important thing is to follow the round-robin principle, and you should not punish your devs who come with the best answers by asking them all the time. You need to figure out how to spread this out and how to be equally painfully for the entire team. Yeah, I've started a bit on this. All co-workers are different, and this means that there is no optimal way to ask the question, and it depends entirely on the receiver. For me, developers, they are all on a spectrum, as you might say, and in one end of the spectrum is the highly technical developer, which I've been working together with a number of those over the years. They're less common nowadays, but they, or the ones I've met, were very narrowly focused on what they were doing with the code, going all the way down, and they did not really understand the breadth of the software, and especially not what the user was wanting. And when you are asking questions for this kind of developer, you need to add some detail and help them out a bit. And later on in the process, you might also need to help them out with some user-facing text they can put in when they fix the bug and alert the user as expected. Because the developers of this type I have met, they don't like writing text, and they are pretty bad at it also. In the other end of the spectrum is a very dominant type today, which is the full-stack developer, which looks more broadly at it, understands that the users want to do something, understands how to try to deliver this. And if you start swamping this developer with details, he just gets annoyed with you because he understands what he's doing, and he like just to figure out for himself what the UI text should be. So basically, when you are communicating with the broad persons, you can get off with asking questions with less details, and it's also even a good idea to do so. Some developers also have different preferred communication channels. Some prefer just pop over and we'll have a chat, and sometimes people want to do it in Slack, and some developers prefer to have it in Jira from the start. And I prefer to go as a low detail as possible, as lightweight as possible, but I always do what a developer prefers within the processes we have. And if I'm in doubt how to ask the question and how to accommodate the developer, I just ask, and people are always happy to tell how they would want us to proceed. And that's the way I do it. Then I'll get back to the self-contained questions I mentioned before. And the idea is that it's a specific question. And I should just add that the idea with the self-contained question is important for the written questions. For the oral questions, it's not as important because you can just follow up easily. So you want to be specific about what you're asking about, and you want to anticipate the follow-up questions that might be. And then you want to structure this, as I mentioned before, and the more text you add, the more important it is to structure it. And to structure it, you can use this, which is the journalist's inverted pyramid, journalistic principle, where you start out with the most newsworthy info, then follow up with important details, and end up with the most boring stuff. And in a testing environment, that could be the URLs and the devices and the environments and all. And why is it that journalists, they use this? It's actually quite easy. They use this because people never read the entire article, or very, very seldom read the entire article. People never read the entire newspaper, at least. So the idea is there's a headline, and if you just read the headline and skip the article, you know the most important thing. If you read the headline and read the beginning of the article, you also know the most important things and a little bit more. So the longer you proceed, the less these details are required. And that's actually a very, very efficient way of communicating, and it also makes you headline your question, trying to make it a brief one-sentence thing. What is it we're talking about here? And typically what I do when I create one of these questions in Slack and they are getting a bit long, I try to repeat the question at the end here for the developer and just asking him as a brief thing, do you think this is a bug or whatever? There might be a question in the top of my question, but the devs will have forgotten that when they get to the bottom. They'll just be thinking, what should I do? So I'm just helping them out there. And again, screenshots, videos, always good. And then the Socratic questioning. This is a special way of asking questions to make people think more deeply about something. And a Socratic question might sound innocent, but the idea is that it points to some implicit assumptions or hidden complexities. For example, you could have a new feature on a page, and there are a number of different pages that you could come from when you're entering the new feature. And one way of challenging the developer would be, have you tested all the ways you can get to this page? That's also already becoming a bit passive-aggressive. So you can instead ask, if I come from page B, what happens there? And it could be if I come from page C, what happens there? Sometimes you might even get a question here, and the developer will answer, oh, I hadn't thought of that. We need to figure out what to do in that case. And that's when the questioning becomes really interesting, because these questions, they will boost your street cred instead of depleting it. What I try to do is to get up in the helicopter and build a detailed mental model of the software I'm working with. And this has been a key thing in my career, taking notes and making this detailed model in my head. And what I have seen over the years or in my career is that it's hard, it takes long work, but at one point, maybe after a year or something, then people start coming to you for answers, because now you know more than they do. And if you continue doing that, you could actually be a very, very valuable knowledge hub in the team. And one thing that's important to me to mention also, that following requirements, it's not enough to do this. The requirements are always incomplete, and there is also this unlucky thing that the more requirements you add, the more gaps there will be between the requirements, and the less inclined people will be to find those gaps. So you need to have the mental image, and then reading this, and then figuring out how this new requirement, for example, fits into the huge, delicate building of the software. Anybody on the team can get, or they in some degree have this mental image in their head, but the testers are in a unique place to get this, because they are getting around everywhere around the UI, and they don't need time to do some proper implementation, and they have time to actually prod the software to try to make it bleed back actually. And of course, arguments. Sometimes when you start asking questions, it'll end up in an argument. You will be wrong sometimes, and sometimes people just don't agree with you. That's also what happens. And what you should actually be a bit wary about is, if no arguments exist or come up at all, this might be a sign that your team members, they're just thinking, I just work here, I don't give a fuck. And it's much more fun to work with people who have an opinion about what they are doing, and it makes for a better work day. I try to see the arguments as opportunities for change, and I'm very clear in my mind that having this argument now might prevent me having a more difficult argument at a later time. But when you are having these arguments, you need to be tread very, very carefully, and don't be personal. Structure your arguments like I was talking about before. Have your arguments ready, and that increases the chances of a possible outcome. So yeah, be diplomatic, but honest. Bugs, they are a fact of life in software development, and basically people and developers, they need to suck it up. This is what we are doing, and we want to work together, but it can be hard. One of the hard things I've hit on is working on a team where different developers, they deliver quite different quality. And that can be hard because, it takes 4 times the work to test this person's work and only 1 time the work for the other one. And that basically means you are soaking your effort to keep that developer in play. And what I try to do, if I get into this, is that I try to talk to the developer who is not really performing, and I don't do it in front of the others. That would be a very bad thing. I don't schedule a meeting long in advance. We just take an ad hoc discussion at one time, and I will be talking about these things, and then I will be coming with proposals for how the developer can start delivering better quality, concrete things he can do, and that actually helps, at least to some degree, and at least it starts a discussion about what is going on here. Of course, I also sometimes involve the managers if some more might need to be done, but I always try to keep it in the team first. And the last thing on the slide: don't lose your temper. Sometimes it can be hard, but it's never worth it. Then the bug reporting. It works a lot like the questions. You just need to swap a few words and remove the question mark. If you have headlined it properly, you already have the title of the bug, and then you have the details. But you need to remember that bugs might lie around for a while before being fixed, so you might need a little more detail. And also you might not know who is going to fix the bug, so you will need to target probably a middle-of-the-road developer with the amount of detail. What to watch out for. First one, don't be sloppy, and I know that's a hard one, but in reality this means make sure you are less sloppy than your developers. So it's very important in the long run. If you are losing your credibility, so the developers expect you to ask a question or to point at bugs that really aren't there, then you are in for a very hard time. So you want to have some kind of respect for the developers so that they will get the expectation. Then if you disturb them to ask a question, there is actually a good reason to ask that question. Of course you will make mistakes, but you will be respected for asking relevant questions and making relevant mistakes. You also need to be very careful about being the boy who cried wolf, and this can sometimes be hard, but especially around release crunches where we are under time, where we are pressed. And sometimes, if I find something that's a potential release breaker, of course I don't research half a day in Jira to figure out if I got the answer from somewhere else. I typically go to a dev, and then I'll say, I found this, it seems it might be urgent, and I make clear that I have not checked all of the blah, 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 so the developer knows, and then we look at it fast. And that also is much better than trying to sugarcoat it and not saying that you skipped something. It's fine to skip some quality steps if there is a reason to do it, so just be open. And don't try to be funny. I've just learned in a long career in testing that the bugs that the testers are laughing at are not the bugs the developers are laughing at a lot of the time, especially because the bugs have been made by the developers or other developers. So it's better to stay on the ball. And finally, don't forget to say thanks. It goes a long way, also in software development. I've talked a lot about asking questions now. In the last part here, I'll talk about something I've come to think of as the quality delta. And what is the quality delta? The quality delta is the tester's playing field. This is where the questions are asked. This is here the bugs are reported, hopefully also fixed. And it's very important to know and understand this field, especially as a tester. And you can also see the quality delta as a gap between the initial quality delivered by a developer and then the shipping quality being put out to the customer afterwards. And this quality depends of course, both on the initial quality, but also on the time and effort allocated to improving things. And this is also here where the uneven quality from individual developers come into place, because it can be hard to justify that you use another formula for another dev. And if you don't like the word the quality delta, then you can think of it as the room for improvement. And this may be a small room or a larger room. So what determines the quality delta? First of all, it's time to test. As I said, no time, no manpower, we won't get far. We'll just ship what we hope is finished. And you also need time to fix bugs. We need to set aside time both for the developer to fix the bug, but probably also for retesting of this bug and for retesting of a broader feature set if the fix is complex. And here, the process for fixing bug is important. And I sometimes say that the less process, the better. This is about documentation requirements, bug review boards, etc. If it's too cumbersome, then fewer bugs will be reported, and then you will deliver lower quality. And for example, some of the simple bugs that you could find there could be spelling mistakes, it could be a misplaced image or a jerky animation, and that kind of bugs are typically easy to fix and they are safe to fix, but it's also the stuff that ordinary users will look at the first. So if you make it hard and tough to report a spelling mistake, then you are not doing yourself a favor. I'm not totally against documentation in this way, but I'm really for finding the least detailed way of working and going as fast as possible for whatever you're working with. You also need management to commit to quality. You need to figure out with management what level of quality is it we in general want to have here. And if you don't have that backing, then I don't think it makes sense to try and do skunkworks to make the product better than management wants. That can be immensely frustrated, and actually, I have tried it a few times, but one time, a long time ago, doing a CMS system at a company, before it was called CMS, as I said, we were doing some pretty cool things, ambitious thing with a cool UI and lots of small things, and we were delivering stuff and had a good time doing so. And then we ended up being bought by a competitor and all transformed into their offices. And then it became quite obvious that our new owner didn't really care that much about the user experience. It's good enough was good enough, and what we had, that was very, very much more than good enough. And I could see there was no way I could change this. This was management values from the top, so I ended up doing what most of the team did. I quit, and I found a job at another company where they took more pride in what they are doing. It's very important for me, has always been, to be able to work a place where people are committed to making something cool and doing it together. A final thing about the delta here is that you cannot look it up in a book. You need to know and understand what is happening in the team and around the team. And you can understand this delta and use it to guide your testing efforts. And as I said, if you don't like the delta, figure out if you might want to leave. And then it's about navigating the quality delta. And I typically get a bit of flack here when I say that only report the bugs that are within the quality delta. These are the bugs that will have a reasonable chance of being fixed. I've met testers who seem to read in the 11th commandment that testers must report all bugs, and I sharply disagree with that. But if you need to be able to figure out should this bug be reported or not, then you need to have an understanding about how complex it is to fix. And as a tester, you are able to get an okay idea about this, and sometimes you will need to drag in a developer to figure it out. At one of my previous companies, we took this to the extreme. I was the QA manager, and from my boss, he dictated that basically we don't have a bug backlog. Either we fix the bug at once, or we close them as won't fix. And if they then pop up back again, I will just create a new bug for it, and then it was maybe important. And as the manager here, I was tasked with doing this, running triage of bugs, and we were just fixing them, and I was just closing them. And I have never been in a bug place. It was actually bug heaven there. And you cannot do this in all teams and in all settings, but we were having a high-performing, very experienced team where we would actually do this. Also, we were not burdened by Scrum and stuff. We were doing Kanban. We had probabilistic ideas about how far we would be getting. And also, we could do this, and it cut so much red tape. So I hope I get to try that again, but I'm not sure. Also, when you're proposing features, you should also propose features that are within the quality delta. If you go way overboard, then people might start thinking that you don't have an idea, you're not realistic. But actually, what could be even worse, which I have experienced, is that you might actually get what you want. Back again at this CMS provider where I was working, we were going to do an upgrade of old templates, page templates, to new page templates. And I was advocating for doing a quite complex migration, which would make pixel perfect, almost pixel perfect versions of the old templates in the new template engine. And part of this was that it was easy to test because we had some quite good automated snapshotting running in Silk Test at the time. But we ended up using a lot of time on this, and even though the result was almost pixel perfect, the templates were more clumsy than they should probably have been. And that's actually one of my regrets. I should have gone for a less complex solution. We would have saved a considerable amount of time, and maybe the customers might even be happier for it. But yeah, at that point, I guess my mental model of the software was so respected within the team that when I argued for why we should do this, then they just said, yes, we'll just do it. And yeah, so this is one of my regrets. I seldom regret bugs that escaped into the wild, because that's a fact of life. But this, where I ask people to put in additional work for no good reason, I don't like that. The final thing here, yeah, pick your battles. It's not worth fighting about each and everything. And yeah, summing up, yeah, the main points: stay inside the tent. You are within the team, and you are part of the team. And whenever managers start saying that the devs are fighting the testers, I correct them, because that's not the part. We are helping each other. We are making each other better. That's the way it works. And yeah, the second one, optimize your questioning. Do it at work, do it at home, do it all your life. It can always be better. And yeah, accumulate knowledge, enormously important. Needed to get up in the helicopter. And if you're going to get there, it's going to be much more fun, and you're going to be worth much more money. And I think actually this helicopter perspective is the main reason why I never wanted to rise above the QA manager, because I really like building this mental map and using it both for new features and for everything else. It's a hugely satisfying thing to do. Yeah, and the final one, of course, punish the software. That's another super part of my job. I like to take a bug that's complex and not really well understand, and then nailing it, and I like being able to then reproducing like you play on a piano and just saying bing, and then the bug pops up, and yeah, you nailed it. Yeah, that's all. Any questions? You can all contact me on that long mail.